So I think that reviewing media can be really difficult, especially if you're trying to give it some kind of numerical score, because everyone has different tastes, and I don't know if it's possible to like be fully objective. Of course, it's really not possible. It's always subjective, but there's a difference between a good subjective review and a bad subjective review, and the distinction between those things is also subjective. So here, I'll say this. When I try to think of what media is really good, I try to think of it like this. What were the creators of the media, the piece of art, going for? How well did they do it? And was that a good thing for them to go for? I like that 3-point criteria a lot because it means that it takes you out of your subjective enjoyment of the game and rather like rolls it back to a sort of a broader understanding of what the art value of the piece of media was. Thankfully, I don't have to do this for Outer Wilds because I think that it's conceptually a 10 out of 10 and I also think that in terms of my enjoyment it's a 10 out of 10. So, it it's completely broken by Outer Wilds because there's just no need to separate these two criteria. It's just too good. So I want to talk about a couple of things with this game before because I only have a little bit of time. Um, the Outer Wilds is a really, really, really good um sort of sandbox exploration game where you're in a little Tinker Toy universe or a solar system that's on the brink of destruction, and you exist in a time loop where you try to solve the mysteries, learn the puzzles, and you have about 20 minutes to do it. And when your time runs up, you go back to the beginning, and that's that. And through the whole game, you never gain anything but knowledge, which is amazing because it means that theoretically, there's no difference between a save that's been played for 20 hours and 0 hours. When you start up from the beginning of a time loop, that's it. It's the beginning of the time loop. It's that simple. And it means that with knowledge, you can do so many more, cool things. And also, it means that anytime you learn a new thing, a new pathway, a new technique, a new mechanic, that mechanic was always available to you. That's the difference between Outer Wilds and a normal, like, Metroidvania. In a Metroidvania or another game with a lot of exploration and learning, it's like you get the double jump item and that lets you double jump. In Outer Wilds, you could always double jump. You just didn't know how to. Literally, if you had that knowledge, you could do it. And it's constructed so well, a beautiful puzzle box where everything can technically be done from the start, but it's all just structured in a way where you're probably not going to. If you want to, the game can be 15 minutes long if you're just that smart, but that's probably not going to happen. You go through all these loops to find out this and that, piecing little tiny bits of the story together. And it's so rewarding. That magical feeling of piecing everything together is so wonderful. I've played the game and the DLC. And when I played the game, I had this overwhelming feeling of exploration the game tries to capture so well. Like I was this brave explorer. And it's so hard for games to capture that feeling because when you're playing video games, you know the developers fine-tuned everything and other people have played it. So being like the big explorer, it's not really a feeling that's easy to capture. Power fantasies are easy. You smack things with a big hammer, whatever. But the feeling of being a discovery, like of being like a voyager on the frontier, that's very unique. That's a very strange thing to capture, and this game captured it beautifully, and the DLC did as well. I think that conceptually the game is amazing on so many levels. I think that it's very morally, and I hate to say this word, but almost spiritually fulfilling, where it's almost impossible to play the game without reflecting on like the metaphysical and our purpose in the universe. It deliberately tries to evoke these questions, but it does so much better than other games like, in my opinion, Near Automata, where their way of invoking it is by having people like run philosophy text through two Google Translate like cycles and then like putting it as character dialogue. Like that's like I guess it can get you thinking, but yeah. But Outer Wilds conveys its themes with zero people explaining them to you and nobody quoting philosophy. All the character dialogue is incredibly straightforward and personable. It's all about the interpersonal interactions between those characters. Nobody gives some weird info dump, but all the themes are conveyed beautifully. And that's really difficult to do. And it's such a positive game and it's so optimistic and I really really like it. And I think a lot of people talk about the higher level elements of the story where the feelings it gives you, the experience, but There's another thing that a lot of people don't appreciate, and it's the mechanical tactility, the satisfaction, the kinesthetics of the game. Because you can make the most amazingly structured puzzle game in the world, and nobody would like playing it if it sucked to play. But thankfully, everything in Outer Wilds feels really great. Moving through space feels really great. All the planets are spaced just far apart enough that they feel satisfying to move from one to the other, but not so far away that you get bored traveling. I have never been bored playing Outer Wilds, and this is a game with a time loop, meaning that when you wake up again and you're on the wrong planet, you have to go to another planet. You'd think that would get boring. I've gotten bored making 30-second death runs in Diablo or World of Warcraft. Like I've gotten bored doing 12-second death runs, but I never got bored in the 1 or 2 minutes it took me to get back to where I was in Outer Wilds. Why? Is it because the game is beautiful? Is it because it sounds beautiful? Is it because it's fun to look at and play and experience? Is it because the flying the ship is really fun? Is it because there's this weird contrast between the folksy, almost backwoods construction of everything that your civilization has built, everything made out of like wood, and the fact that you're traveling across stars effortlessly, and that mishmash just keeps everything from feeling like it sags back into meaningless stereotype? I have no idea, but it's really, really cool. I'm um I'm very, very satisfied with these games. I would absolutely give them a 10 out of 10, I would say. I think that they're worth literally anyone's time. I can't think of a single like demographic of game playing person, like any group of people who play games who couldn't benefit from experiencing this. It's just such a well constructed experience. And I think it's very unique, and I think that it's very informative as to what we can do in the future to make better games. I don't really want to talk about it in specifics too much because I know that if this gets released as a video, there will be people watching it who who um who haven't played it, and I don't want to spoil a damn thing for them, so I won't. Um, I'll just say this much, you know. I think that it's really hard not to tear up a little bit at the game because it's so effective at conveying this deep, just tidal wave of empathy for creatures that get virtually no characterization, you know? It's almost conceptually awe-inspiring. The term that I like to use is the sublime, which is when you feel this awe or this inspiration at the size of nature, you know? Like when you're standing out at the cliffside and you see like these huge waves rolling forward and crashing, and you look down and you think like, I would be annihilated by those waves. Or when you look out over the Grand Canyon and you think like, we're infinitesimally small compared to this. It's the feeling I get all the time when I learn about space stuff, you know, like anything going on in space. Uh, it's very good at making you feel, if not insignificant, then you get this it's a very particular feeling, you know? It's a very specific feeling. Yeah, or witnessing an eclipse. Yeah. I think that that feeling elicits in us a lot of really unique emotions because it's something that basically all of human civilization is built on getting us to ignore. We built the world to be people sized, you know? Everything that we do, everything that we experience, interact with, it's all built by humans for humans. So when we interact with it, when we engage with it, we're operating on our scale. We build big things. We've built skyscrapers and football fields and stadiums and stuff like that, but they're for us, you know? But the universe isn't for us. The universe just is. And it's that disconnect between its grandness and its apparent lack of immediate purpose that I really think fuels that sublime feeling. And I think that's why so many people in chat react so strongly to it. At the end of every time loop, the sun explodes, and that's not a spoiler. You find that out real quick. Um, and when the sun explodes, the whole solar system is engulfed in flame. So why does chat have a little ritual every time the sun is about to explode when you guys don't have a little ritual for any other like video game mechanic that entails death, right? Like, I mean, I've played plenty of video games on stream. It's not normal for like chat to have this big thing, but there is a big thing here because the sun exploding isn't like some regular in-game death mechanic. There's something existentially confrontational about it. You know what I mean? Because we all know that eventually our star will die, and it's so far in the future. Well, we won't experience it. It won't happen to us, but there's something very beyond human comprehension about that kind of death. Being hit in the head really hard, or getting in a car accident, or dying to a skeleton in Dark Souls, these, well, we're probably not going to die to a skeleton in Dark Souls, but these things are conceptually familiar to us, you know. Our media braces us with ways in which we can engage with that end. You can look both ways before you cross the street, you know. You can not get clubbed in the head. You can sprinkle salt on the grave so the skeletons don't rise, right? But the sun exploding is utterly beyond us. It is it is completely and absolutely beyond our ability to to reconcile outside the abstract. It's yeah, it's a feeling of cosmic insignificance. But oftentimes we look at that with a sense of horror. Cosmic insignificance. I mean, this is what Lovecraft often pulled upon to make his stories terrifying. The idea that humanity is this insignificant speck in the shadow of a greater being. But the Outer Wilds takes a different attitude towards it. It's optimistic, you know. I can't spoil nothing about the game, but I'll say that I think that it has ultimately a really optimistic attitude towards the great unknown, towards our exploration of the great unknown, and towards our comparative insignificance. If I had to boil it down to anything, and I'm borrowing this a little bit from Errant Signal, which is a wonderful YouTube video game review channel. But if I had to boil down the theme of Outer Wilds to anything, I would say it's that there is a cosmic significance to exploration and knowledge. That there is something almost existentially valuable about experiencing reality. It's not enough that reality exists. There's something magical about being conscious and experiencing it yourself. In a way, it's almost like a distillation of that old saying, you know, that life is humanity's way of, sorry, life is the universe's way of observing itself, which is, I mean, at least depending on which definitions you use, like a true statement in a way. You know, inert matter, inorganic matter can't observe itself. It just is, but we're special. We can have opinions on things. And maybe those opinions feel trite or meaningless at times, because I'm sure sometimes they are. But there's also something very valuable about being able to have them at all. And that's something we should always fight for, and we should fight to expand them as much as we can. So maybe my opinion on these games is trite and insignificant, but I think it's worth checking out. Or to put it another way, there are very few games that have had this profound of an emotional experience on me while also being so genuinely fun to play, right? You don't always get both of those at the same time. Sometimes they're very entertaining games that roll off your brain like rainwater, and sometimes they're very profound and meaningful, but to actually play them, it's like I'm reminded of the first Pathologic game, you know? Um yeah, you guys know games that I'm kind of talking about here. Um exactly, the anonymous ginger, yeah. It's all about that greater significance. Um and I think that's really really awesome, you know. It reminds me a little bit of the work of Kurt Vonnegut, which is simultaneously very humanist and also very very existentialist, you know? Almost like absurdist, where humanity means nothing in a scale sense, but it's also all that there is, if that makes any sense. Anyway, it's a game worth checking out. It's essentially it might as well be like a philosophy thesis, a self-help book, and a video game wrapped up into one. So you're definitely getting your money's worth. I think the DLC is as worth one's time as the main game because the DLC not only added context to stuff not explained in the main game, but it was very fun to play. It was very beautiful. And I think that in a in a sense, it was also I think it acknowledged an element of how we might react to things that wasn't necessarily acknowledged in the first game, without spoiling anything, you all just finished the DLC with me, right? Did the DLC at the very end of things not add a perspective, which is very understandable, but also not present in the original game? It's worth checking out. Anyway, that's my review. So play the damn game. All right.